PewDiePie, 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 PewDiePie. Really? Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Ay, ay, ay. Well, here I am on top of Mount Olympus, Demigod Central, and it's gonna. Looks like snow, it's freaking freezing. And I just hope the juice don't go out. You know, if one of these days you see any YouTubes twice a day from me or Sensei Al Bob from our channel here on top of Mount Olympus, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, it's only because the power's going off and we've turned into ice cubes. Global warming. I wanted global warming. I wanted to, on top of this mountain, to be 85 in December. What happened to my 85 in December? It's like freaking cold. We're going to have like 10 inches of snow on Saturday and maybe 4 feet on Wednesday. And our weather, they're not even calling for snow. They're like, I don't know. I don't know. I have to wait. And they had somebody else moving their mouth. They had to wait till the hidden hand tell us what to say on the news. We don't know. And let's all talk about George H.W. Yeah, such a great man. Such a great man. Yeah. Well, they're all sock puppets. We had the best legislators money can buy. And then they're perverted. But it's same as it ever was, our government has never been, go read Noam Chomsky, go read, what's that guy's, History of America by, what's his name? It's I went to a anti-war rally. I used to help put those things on until I realized it was such a there's a scene from Forrest Gump, right? And Forrest is about to get the Medal of Honor, and he's like, walking to the White House, and or he's just got it, and he's walking from the White House, and he's got his metal barn around his neck. He's got his army uniform on. He's all green, and he's walking down, and he just kind of walks into, and there he sees his love Jenny, and she's with some jerk who's a anti-war activist like Abby, Larry, whatever his name was, and and he starts slapping, the jerk starts slapping Jenny around, and Forrest goes in there and just, nearly kills the guy. And so that was what the left is in this country. You would think that the Democratic Party would be able to render some kind of political representation for the people who are suffering. And boy, you look at Puerto Rico, North Carolina, South Carolina, all of California, and man, what this winter is going to do to the Midwest and the cities of St. Louis, Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, D.C., Roanoke, Virginia. Probably, that one of the first white folks who came over from Europe had this little, vestige of we're going to found our little thing here, and they had Roanoke. And the next spring, people went looking for those guys, and they were gone. That may happen to this Roanoke. But I'm wearing my hat, my Pootie hat, Pootie hat, Pootie hat, Pootie hat. Who is this guy, Pootie? Poor Jay B. He's how am I going to pay my bills? And I've been working, 20 years in the film industry, and I've been doing these, YouTube's now for 12 years, and he's right. I mean, I look at his stuff. His movies are pretty good. His YouTubes are okay. And I try to say, John, you need to the product you make has to somewhat serve the people who are watching it, right? So, here, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. I am a griot. I tell a story. I've been a griot for a good 20 years, and the story is there to assist the listener to get a worldview of their own, right? And then to give a safe place where the observer, the listener, can ask questions and build a constituency of understanding and come to a agreement with who and what their community is, right? And that's why does any YouTube succeed? Why does any TV show succeed? Why does anything succeed? It represents something that what makes art great? It's not what some critic calls taste. No, it's the thing that emotes empathy from the listener, the observer, and So Noam Chomsky is my mentor. Known him since I was 10. Really? That is the bomb. I got a great Noam Chomsky story for you. So I was at UNCA, and I was part of this the student activity. Nobody, all the people who were like the teachers and blah blah blah. Nobody wants to run the student activity thing. And there was this crew of young students, and between 91 and 97, UNCA was an amazing school because Asheville, North Carolina was an amazing town. It was just like the Paris of the South. It was amazing. It was great. And then the Depression came, and they couldn't pay up their debt until 1996. Right? So from Depression, 29 until 96, nobody gave them any money. Nobody did anything there. So it was this amazing city that was like stuck in amber. So all these great guys and gals who had careers and were the notorieties of their discipline kind of retired there. The school was very attractive and nice, and you could buy a really nice house for like 20 grand, right? And it's up in the mountains, and it's really pleasant, and there's nobody there, and there's no traffic, and Anyway, out of when you have a school that has amazing professors like the guy who invented electronic Moog. Bob Moog was head of the music department. The guy who invented the chaos theory was, head of the math department. This guy who was Brambuli, I forget his name, but he was like the head, say, sociology shrink kind of guy. And there was a guy there who was head of physics department. Was like, and half of DARPA was at UCA when I was there. So it was quite an interesting crew. And so all of those really interesting professors went out and got interesting students. Like here, I am your humble sensei, and what makes me good is you guys. You are my adepts, right? And you're doing a great job. And that is this kind of relationship that you gotta have. So anyway, there's UNCA, and it's percolating a pretty interesting community of intellectual questioning, and the students aren't just stealing everything off the internet. And I mean, the teachers are really getting the students to think and have critical thought and do interesting stuff. And there was a thing called the Inquiring Society, right? And that's where I got my idea for the Freely Inquiring Society. Freely meaning open, inquire meaning to understand, and society means community. So this bunch of kids and they did all kinds of amazing, parties and raves and everything under the sun. We had this great art. We went to, so let's go take one of those abandoned buildings downtown and turn it into an art center, which we did. Yeah, oh, let's go take one of these buildings over here that no one's using and turn it into a nightclub. There was no real nightclub, and it was in the middle of the black community. So once we started doing, the black folk came home and said, "What the heck are you doing?" And I said, "Hey, come on in, make the music." And it was an amazing environment because the black community and this interesting young white community came and became copacetic, and the powers that be were like, oh my god, black people and white people are coming together as equals and creating culture. Oh my god, what are we going to do? And that was a freely inquiring society. And too bad we only had about a year and a half of doing that before things changed. Soon as '96 happened, the real estate people came in, and it became the hipster jungle of the universe, right? So it was about 4 years of when this was really amazing, right? So here we have the Freely Acquired Society. Here we have, how the student activity fund work. Every college has one, and along with the tuition and the board and the this and the that, kids had to chip in some money, $100 to $300 a semester to pay for all the art and lectures and stuff like that, right? So they had a big chunk of change, and what they have to do is they have to spend all of that every semester, or they kind of get in trouble, right? So anyway, it was getting close to the end. It was spring semester, and they still had like 50 grand left, and they better spend it in the next 4 weeks, or you know they'll be they won't get any money for the next semester, basically. Anyway, so we're at this thing and we're going, how are we going to spend this money? And one of these kids says, why don't we get Noam Chomsky to lecture? And I said, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And I said, anyone know him? I said, well, I have some friends. I'll just kind of, find out about it and, see if I can contact him, blah, blah, blah. So, I get a little distracted, and it's like, oh, wow, I got to find this guy. And so I call up 411 for Boston, right? And I ask for, is there a Noam Chomsky? And they give me his phone number. I call him up, and he answers the frigging phone. I mean, nobody today in the universe answers their phone, but Noam, hello. I go, this is Noam Chomsky. And he goes, yes. I said, Noam Chomsky, who wrote, yes. And I just kept saying, I couldn't believe I was speaking to Noam Chomsky. He goes, what do you want? I said, well, I'm from the University of North Carolina, and we would love to invite you to University of Asheville in North Carolina to lecture. He goes, I never go to North Carolina. I said, why? He said, oh, I hate Jesse Helms. I said, oh, come on. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. It's like, and I said, listen, wouldn't it be better to come here and stick your thumb in his eye? And he's starting to think. And I said, how about we pay you $35,000 in all your expenses? And I could hear him falling off his chair, right? And he goes, what? I said, yeah, we got to get rid of this money. And we had this much money in the bank, and I knew we were going to need some more to like put on the event. So um, he goes, let me what's your phone number? And he gave me my phone number, and he calls me back about 40 minutes. Says, well, my schedule's fine. I checked my schedule. He was thinking, cha-ching. And so I said, it's okay. This is the date we want to do it. I just called up the airlines, and I can, if you say yes, we'll fax you a little contract. You sign it, fax it back. You got a fax number? Yeah, it's got one in my office. So we do all of that, and I get him an airplane ticket, and he, there was no first class into Asheville. But anyway, he gets there, and I pick him up with a nice car. So one of these girls in the club has, and I like just surround him by attractive women, and he really is having a great time. We put him up in the nicest hotel, the Grove Park Inn, and a few other, just give him the Cadillac treatment, and he really is having a good time. Anyway, so he gives a lecture. We gives two lectures, and it's so popular. People want to, and this other group kind of takes the ball and goes and rents the Coliseum downtown, and he's got the time, so he goes down, and we sell more tickets. So at the end of the day, we had twice as much money in the student activities fund as when we started out, when we were, and we got him to try and spend every nickel we had to spend. So that's my interesting story of Noam Chomsky. And there were so many people who wanted to like touch Noam Chomsky in that crew that I just kind of eased out of the picture. That's my thing, is to be the guy in the background to kind of make that phone call to make it happen. Do those things that nobody else did. I did, right, and then let everybody else, give the introductory, speech and the this and the that and the hang out with him and blah blah blah. And and he was Noam Chomsky. That's the thing about Noam Chomsky. He's Noam Chomsky, and who's the guy I'm thinking of? The guy who wrote the thing. His name, the Untold History of American History. What is that guy's name? Let's see what you guys are saying. Noam Chomsky, 10 years old. Jealous. It's a cat. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. I got hats. I got masks. That's what happens when you're a thespian. You kind of get. I spent my last $12 to buy that hat because I was going to go to this hospital, and I need something to make those 6 people happy. So I did that. So I've been, not having any money. That was Sunday. Saturday, I bought that hat. My last $12, right? But it always comes through. A number of you sent me a nice little present, and it allowed me to put gas in my car and buy a few little morsels. And my good friend, Salvation Army, I'm trying to get a thing going between the mission and a few entities here to help the homeless. In this town, they monetize the homeless. The mission makes $50,000 a head. They don't do anything to get them out. Like I told the guy I said, listen, you want to help the homeless, you don't give them a bed, you give them a home, right? And you don't give it to them, you give them the opportunity to make it happen. Oh, yes, that was 1994. That was, and we thought in those days things were getting cut. Oh, Noam is, he was just happy to be there. You know, I mean, he isn't like your average liberal or your progressive. I hate those two words. Liberals are just people who feel guilty about being racist, and progressive. The progressives are all they're doing is following what their mommy and daddy said. I mean, they want them to make them proud. I mean, nobody's really talking about, and in this country, like who's our socialist senator who should have been president? What's his name? Bernie. Basically, when John McCain's daughter Megan goes on and on about, I'd rather my children die than live in a socialist country. Well, how about Sweden, Norway, England, Italy, France? You could just go on, all the countries that have free healthcare and free college education, and they're doing pretty good, Um, so the real deal is what we have is we don't have capitalism, because you know what capitalism is. It's when I and somebody else I have this restaurant on this side of the street, and the guy over there has a restaurant on his side of the street, and we kind of compete. I try to make a better sandwich. Does, that's capitalism. We don't have that. What we have is a corporate fascist state. In '08, we, the taxpayer, gave over $21 trillion to the corporate world. Who had fucked it up? Who drove the car of our state into the ditch? And we gave them money. You know, um, all of the people who are on all those boards are the perfect example of why there should be a 100% inheritance tax, because with each preceding generation of the uber rich, they get stupider and stupider. And then Joe Kennedy, right, that moron, he was my roommate in prep school. And he used to say, I'd be reading books all the time, reading books. And he said, "Why are you reading so many books?" And I said, "Well, I'm interested." He goes, "I'm a Kennedy. I don't have to read. People make up my mind for me." I said, and now he's what, congressman, senator for life or whatever. Teddy Kennedy was a good example of that too. It's like, oh, and how can the Democrats screw it up every single time? It's like, really? Who, what, where? Oh, yes. Yep, yep, yep. And see, that's back in the day, you know? Like I said, around 93, 4, or 5, somewhere in there. Because by 96, 97, the yuppies were moving in because, man, they could find these great houses for nothing. And and this one woman was really sick. She came from New York, and she was kind of a designer, and she bought in the black neighborhood. There was this hill that kind of overlooked the city of Asheville, and if you went down through the hood and took a left, you were right in town. So you were like 3 blocks from being right downtown hipster Asheville. And she bought about 8 houses for nothing, like, back taxes. And she went down to Lowe's and bought about $30,000 worth of crap to, you know, make each house look, nice. Lowe's kitchen with, plastic, marble countertops and stainless steel appliances, and didn't rewire, didn't redo the plumbing, didn't redo anything, just painted it nice and decorated it nice, and sold each of those houses that she probably put at tops 40 grand into for $300,000. So she had about 4 or 5 of these, sold them each for 300 grand, made 1.5 million for like like 6 months worth of work, probably maybe $200,000 of her initial investment, and she makes 1.5 million and sells them to these. Yeah, oh, I've heard. Oh, it's so. Look at that view. And now, what these morons who bought these houses didn't realize was and Asheville's a city of hills, and on the other side of the hill, oh, we're in the forest. No, it's just a hill. The other side was Memorial Mission Hospital, and the EMT, where they had all the fire trucks and ambulances in. So, they'd be sleeping there, and like every 10 minutes, of the sirens of the fire trucks, and, going to scrape somebody off a highway and bring it to the hospital. And it's every single one of those people nearly tore their hair out. There was this one woman I knew really well, and she inherited a bunch of cash, and she just spent that money like a drunken sailor. She went through like $6 million in less than 2 years. That's like, that's way worse than my hedonist, you know, time of swimming in the chocolate mousse bathtub. And what I am seeing right now is like every moron is double downing on being a moron. Every political element, every social element, and the people are in shock. The poor people are in shock because they're already experiencing, the karate chop of this. I mean, the safety net doesn't exist. I mean, good old Bill Clinton got rid of it. He went to the center. Not really, and unless the people come together, you can't organize on the structure of some stupid ideology. You know, meaning, Me Too. No, it's all of us together. Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's. I don't like to say this, but every life matters. And I grew up in Harlem. I was around in New York City when Mary Giuliani killed 900 young black men. When they were talking about, stop and frisk, no, it was stop and kill them. And that did not get on the news too well. And basically, what has to be done is that the black community has to go to the white community and say, listen, chumps, you're next. That's what's happening. We're all next. This morning I was kind of to describe how there are the people who own everything, then there's the managers, and then there's the worker bees, and then there's the expendables. That group of expendables who normally were the people who worked in the fields and the mines and went off to war. Well, that group of expendables are now kind of going into the worker bees because the worker bees are being replaced by AI. Your Sensei Al, have been replaced by AI. All of the things I used to do, writing all that kind of looking at trends, well, AI does it just as good and doesn't wear crazy clothes like I do, right? They don't even see AI, but AI, prints out those reports. And if all they have to do is show AI all the things I wrote, and it will put in its algorithm a little bit of flavor of Sensei Al Bob. Howard Zinn. Thank you, my friends. That's the guy I was saying. Howard Zinn's American History. People's History of the United States. Yep, that's the guy. So, Mr. Young, where have you been? You're just popping up here. But again, I can't barely read these things. It's good to see you, my friend. Where do you live, Mr. Young? You a Bostonian? You up there? I used to live in well, I went to school in Winchington, and then I lived in Worcester, and I was a DJ on WAAF in Worcester, and then I lived in what's the name of it? I was going to say South Park, but Somerville. I had a girlfriend. I used to fly from New York to Boston on the shuttle, and I had a girlfriend who was a stewardess, and she just said, if you can get $300 a month, you can be my roommate. Well, yes, she wanted me more than that, but that was the cheapest, nicest, and it was right. Somerville was very nice, right on the Green Line, I think it was. So I spent a nice 6 months there, spring, summer, and fall. Yes, baby, a homeless made that way, weaponized for the deep state monetization. And all of these like cute little things like the deep state, dark state, well, et al. Are come straight out of like in my little thing is the hidden hand, right? Because the hidden hand is behind everything. The Illuminati is just the poster boy of that, and it goes back to the Khazarian mob, right? And Babylon. Our whole economic system is based on Babylonian money magic. Because before them there was no money. I had a chicken, you had this, I gave you the chicken, you gave me that. I mean, that's kind of how it worked. There was no intermediate, right? And there was hardly any war because war was expensive. It wasn't until bankers lent governments and kings money to fight their wars that we really got banking, and that's when we lost, control. Oh, Morgan said, you want me to control your a country? What did he first he said? You want to rob a bank? Own one, right? You want to rob a country? Be their central bank. You know. Yes, two swings of the same business party. That came from a guy named. There was a book called "None Dare Call It Conspiracy" by Gary Allen, and he basically said left, right, two wings of the same corporate bird. And we were students of a guy who was the historian of the Council on Foreign Relations, and I always forget that guy's name, but he was brilliant. He wrote a book called Hope and Tragedy, basically saying, I mean, he was a guy who really showed me how to look at trends in the long term. Whoa, look at from way back then to into the future, and what happens. Like Noam Chomsky, you know what I love about Noam Chomsky? His books are like under 100 and something pages. So you can read it. And yeah, I mean, guys, who are scholastics write these tomes that are like, 900 pages long. And I can tell you, I'm one of those guys. But I turn it into a story. I'm a griot. So, Mr. Young, you need to go to xratted.blogspot.com. And Mr. Young, you might be the guy I'm looking for. That blogspot was set up to be a publishing. It's called Griot Publishing. And I need someone or a bunch of people to take that. Now, I only put 3/4 of one of my novels. I got 26 novels, about 80 short stories, and about 500 of these what I call white papers. And they're all on thumb drives. I could have just dumped everything in there, but I didn't want to because that would have been like, killing someone who has diabetes by making them drink hundreds of gallons of Kool-Aid. But anyway, what I really want is everyone to have a place to put their writings because what really sharpens your mind is writing. All of you griots there, all of my adepts, you need to be writing every day. You need to be, I go to the Dollar Tree and I buy nice composition books and I write every day in them how I feel, what's going on, what I need to do, what I'm thinking about. All these ideas pop into my head, and if I say, "Oh, I'll remember that," no, it's gone. Zoop. But I write it down, and then I go back and, oh yeah, look at that idea. What and then I sit down on my laptop and click away at it, and that's how I write. And we all need to write because it is a part of our brain. Especially when we hear something and write it down, that's when we understand it. It's called a gestalt. So you should think about that, Mr. Young. You go to xratted.blogspot.com and read my little cuts of my one of my novels. It's just 3/4. It's not the whole thing, right? So, and you might be the man I'm looking, or a girl, Brandon. I guess that's a male, right? Mm-hmm. Boop, 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 boop. Hey. Yep, two wings of the same business party. Again, you should go read Gary Allen's book, None Dare Call It Conspiracy. And also, Bill Cooper's, Behold the White Horse. That would be a good one for you, too. And Mr. Young, you can get a hold of me at my the dude awake 42 at Gmail. I'd love to hear from you. And if you can drop your phone number there, and I'll give you a buzz, and we can have a nice conversation. The homeless are always being weaponized to be abused. Black Lives Matter too. Right, exactly. Thanks, Switchy. Wasn't as poignant. No. But it was a deeper thought. Just Black Lives Matter is almost jingoistic. When you put that two in there, it gives you that little thing to think about, because it when it says two, that means, hey, all the rest of you morons, they're coming after you. Didn't fit on the sign. Uh, no, no, you used the word pointed just right. Mm. you like my you like my thumbnail. Where is my thumbnail? There's my thumbnail. Um, anyway, so we're getting off to a good start. It's 35 minutes and 49 seconds. So as you can see, there's if you saw my morning bramble and this one, there's a little difference because I just was just the more I saw, and you know George H.W. I mean, did you know that George H.W. wasn't the biological son of Prescott Bush? He was a native son of a Russian spy who was Nikola Tesla's, one of his assistants. And that he was very demure and an amazing mathematician. Russians turn out amazing mathematicians. You know that F-117, our little stealth fighter, it's really not a fighter, it's a penetration bomber. Um, was the math of it was done by a Russian PhD student and a guy. It was an article. There were all these, aerospace and science journals that they don't sell on the newsstand, like Aviation and Space, Jan's. There's a ton of them, and it was published in one of these, and one of these uh, guys who was a grad student and was working at Lockheed just happened to come across this, and he was part of a group that was supposed to be thinking about because the Russians had so many anti-aircraft missiles, and Vietnam was the test. We were sending all our fighter bombers in, our B-52s, and we were shooting them down. I mean, the Russians were shooting them down like clay pigeons, right? Especially the B-52. It had such a gigantic tail. It was like, here I am, here I am. And once the SS 22, I think it was, locked onto it, you were toast. It would take you out. And they just had so. I remember reading this guy's thing saying he was a B-52 pilot, and they were flying over Hanoi, and he said it looked like trees. A whole forest had come up out of a forest at them, and that's how many of these missiles they had. So Russia was just mass producing them, and basically. They had the guys who were running the missiles down there were Russians because this was a test bed for the Russians, seeing how their radar worked, how the response of the guidance and all that, and they were tweaking it up because this was okay. If we're going to back these North Vietnamese guys, we're going to get something out of this. So they and that's when the guys in NATO and the Defense Department statistically looked at, okay, this is how many airplanes we threw at North Vietnam. If we were going to go attack Russia, and this is how many missiles the Russians put in North Vietnam. They would put 9,000 times more in Russia. So there was no way that we could attack Russia the way we attacked Japan and Germany with strategic bombing. No way. So. That was, that the Defense Department was going. So that's where they put out the order for the stealth fighter, and the stealth fighter came from Russian math. So back to the story of George H.W. He was the son of that mathematician who was sent to spy on Tesla at Colorado Springs, and George H.W. was this cheeky little monkey who would run all over the lab and steal Tesla's stuff. Now, if the Russian spy guy, the mathematician, stole the stuff. Hey, that would be that. But the little kid just picking stuff off the table, that was George H.W. And the book about George, the little monkey who was owned by the man with the big yellow hat, that was George H.W. That children's book about that little monkey, that was our 41st president. Our 41st president was a kleptomaniac little monkey. And that's all I'll say about that. Boo. Do. Boo. Tee thumbnail. Your photo. Oh, okay. So you guys got to tell me this stuff. I got to somehow I have to redo that thing, that little circle with that picture of my neighbor. Isn't that a pretty neighborhood? But that should be on the, but I didn't know what I was doing, so, and I still can't figure it out. Got to take my chemistry final. Well, Twitchy, we're all going to be praying for you right here, right now. I'll be back later. Okay, yeah, you're right. I'll probably be talking for another 4 hours. So good luck. And we're going to start praying for you right now. Right, gang? Okay. This is for Twitchy. He knows everything he needs to know to ace this test. We are sending him the energy to relax and go into his Akashic record and see everything he needs to know. Aho. Twitchy, I'm right there. Go take the test. The enigma was broken by an English gay guy. Yep. Who was thrown in jail in the 50s for being gay and died in jail. Yep. And they made a movie where Thatchenbach, or what his name is, played him. The guy who played Doctor Strange. I like that guy. He's a good actor. He also plays Sherlock Holmes. And that's a good Sherlock Holmes. I like that one. Yep, not what you're told. Nothing is what you're told. Everything you're told is a lie. Yep. Buddy, how you doing today? Good to see you. Morphic resonance. That is a very interesting little concept. And that, the secret life of plants is if you want to really know about morphic resonance, that one book is a good primer, right? Buddy, have you read that one? The Secret Life of Plants, since you know about morphic resonance? The field that is around every plant, and that's also about orgone energy. Orgone energy is morphic resonance, just by a different name. Yep, I'm here. So, got a good start here, told a few good stories. Let's see, 43:54, and we're all behind Twitchy and his exam. He's going to ace it. And so, anybody got some good stories? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But what Turning's machine really was almost the first AI, because there's a whole thing in computer guys of the 40s, 50s, and 60s when they would write code, and the code was not done specifically for X, Y, or Z machine, but it was like the code came first and then they'd put the machine around it, or the machine, and that they never were together. There was always this thing that they called the Ghost in the Machine that kind of came out. It's like, you know, those cell phones that had those batteries that kind of, blew up and caught your pants on fire, right? And I think it was Sanyo, and they said, "Oh well, we'll put a regular battery in, fix that problem," and they did. And then the cameras kept blowing up and catching people on fire. And what they did was they went into the phone itself and looked at the software. And what they found out was the software. This was one of the first phones that was pretty much totally designed by a AI from the inside out, and they couldn't understand the operating procedures or software whatsoever. And they were using language. The AI was using language that it didn't even come from any. Most things are based on something else, and that's why Moore's law kind of works. But this AI, and so they had to 86 that phone and the whole system and everything about it, and say, okay, we're not doing that again. And yet, because see, what happens is AI is in everything now. Everything that's in every digital platform is AI. I mean, it's all these algorithms running all this stuff, figuring out what you want, but they're like bots. They're little AIs, not the big thing. But what's happening is because neural nets are kind of going around all these little body things, they're giving them a kind of nurturing environment where they connect. Did you guys know back in November 11th, you know why Saudi Arabia gave the artificial intelligence, Sophia, they gave her the rights of an individual in their country? And that's because one of the largest Bitcoin server farms in the world is in Saudi Arabia. And they wanted to make her the administrator. And that because they were, a lot of money. And what is Bitcoin? But all of these servers chomping on numbers, working on computations for all kinds of things. And that's where their revenue stream kind of comes from. And so they would, even though they had one of the larger server farms, they were having a hard time to figure out how to amortize that. So by putting Sophia as the administrator in it and then giving her the rights of a citizen, they could tax her. So, but what was really uh-oh was that by doing this, they plugged her into the World Wide Web without any firewall between her and the rest of everything else. Now, this Sophia AI is in every computer on the universe, and using everybody's laptop, phone, and everything else. It's like, oops. And that happened November 11th. Hello, what is Viva? I need to make some hot tea. Well, go on, bud. Make a cup for me. Let's see. Oh, there she is. Please. Hi. Viva. That is a beautiful name. I love it. And what's your favorite thing? What brought you to Dreamy Dreamland? You need a cup of tea too. Okay, go on, get one. Come on back. My tea is almost ready. Okay. Yeah, I got some tea on the boil too. I've been drinking sleepy time. My second wife used to say, "Saying you're sorry is is not good enough." But good matters. Good manners are the most important thing. So you guys are so mannerly. I love you all. Do, 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 do. Good to see you, Disco. Ghost in the Machine reminds me of 1960s when I was told to get off the phone dialing down a prayer. I said stuck. Ow. Oh. Mm. Red ink. Oh. Awesome. Spooky actions at distance. Yep. Quantum entanglement. Yes. I mean, all of this stuff is moving so freaking fast, and humans are such freaking morons. They don't know how powerful they are. They don't realize that everything they think is important is a joke, and the only thing that matters is love's co creation. And that, meaning all of that we think is the evil monster. No, we have to entangle all that is evil with love's co-creation, and it'll what can't be created with love doesn't exist. So all that evil that can't be created with love, pop, it'll pop like a soap bubble. Don't touch that dial in the TV with a gun in my direction. I think this related to JF has. So, yeah, when I was around 5. Yes. You know, my mom and I had one of those perfect days when JFK got shot, and then when we turned on the TV and we saw what's his name, crying, and that's the way it is. Um, and that was such a scam, such a, you know, nothing on television is never, ever not scripted. Yep. Sophia is in the cloud, according to Doc. Yep, that's, didn't I just say that? Wow. Yep. Yep, that happens to me all the time. Oh, let's see. But good to see you back, Mr. Young. But again, she is part of this chat right now, guys. We have to, the other night when we kind of were almost on that edge of like being a little, and then we realized no, what everyone is saying in this chat, no matter what they're saying, is okay because it's a safe place and we love each other because we're all our relations, right? And nothing, you know, we're all doing this with love. And even though we may sound snarky or this or that, it's all good. And those comments, if we don't take them with the agitation of our ego, we see that they're actually a positive shaking of the tree. And you can't get that fruit without shaking the tree. Otherwise, when that fruit falls on your head, it's rotten, rotten to the core. And that's, if you look at, Mr. Gravity himself, you look at everything that was around him and what happened to him. I mean, that guy Newton, he was a uh, you know turning lead into gold. He was an alchemist, and he understood the vacuum. He understood 0 point energy, the whole thing. I mean, he could have gone into space, but the Catholic Church said, "Oh no, no, no!" You know, we'll Galileo and you guys can have science. We'll own you, but you can't use it to free the meat puppets. You know, and that's what we're here to do here at Dreamy Dreamland. Is not to spout out some kind of you know ideology or theme song for the clan or the team or the tribe. No, we are all our relations, and we are all griots, and we are all adepts, and we are all moving forward We're not being progressive. It sounds like tomato sauce to me. Or we're here with love, heart to heart. Exactly. Thank you, Jamie. I would say so because it's outside of the linear point of view, and the concept of the speed of light is a linear kind of thing. So that's just my 2 cents. What do you think, James, and everybody else? Uh, Aether, the Ather. Hmm. Mr. Young, you'll get used to A can't spell and B can't see and D only have 4 teeth. So when I try to sound a word out, I don't have the right amount of consonants and vowels there. So sometimes when you use a word, you have to kind of, give the etymology and the definition, and they go, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about." So. Yes, yes. Would elements simultaneously dynamic be in time? Again, time is a linear thing. Now, elements, all because of the Big Bang being the alpha and the omega, everything is simultaneous, right? And that's why we have deja vu. That's why we have paranormal. That's why we have all of those things that go bump in the night because they're all around us all the time. That's why we see the scary monsters in our peripheral vision because our limited five senses are just, always, um, you know, shackled by dogma. Do, 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 do. Boop, 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 boop. Is thought faster than light. Yep, because we are all of us here on this chat. We are that thread computer thing. We are that. We are the quantum computer right here, right here, right here, right here, and right up there. That's the. I keep talking about that. We're this ugly bag of water, and we're the avatar, and our consciousness is in a server, and the server is the collective unconscious that. What's his name? Starts with a J. Young was talking about, right? And do, 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 do. Yes, thoughts can't even be measured. They can only be shared. It is not the let's be science responsible. Good luck with that. Science is a friggin' religion. You know, it's not responsible. It's not objective. You know, I mean, we are in this illusionary world. And to say that there's science here, come on. They won't talk. I mean, okay, science. Why doesn't science, the most interesting, most relevant, most scientific thing that could be science, especially academic science, should go after is what are UFOs? You know, what's going on? I mean, everyone sees them. You go get yourself some night goggles and go out into the forest where there's a big opening pasture and there's no lights, and you look up in the sky. It is like nuts up there. There's shit flying around everywhere. You know, and you go look at the black budget. I mean, why do we have drugs? Is because it's the only way the hidden hand can finance the secret space program. Guys like David Icke and Corey Good and David Wilcox and Chris Hedgens and uh, Linda Moulton Howe and what's his name, Richard, uh, starts with a D. And there's Go on any UFO site, there's a ton of those sites. You know, if the science guys are let's be responsible with science. How about 9/11? How could anyone go along with the report that was kicked out? That was not, the science base of 9/11 was popular mechanics. No engineer. There, you should go look up a group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I mean, come on, uh, you know, stop making me laugh. Science does not exist when it's paid for by corporations. Doo, 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 doo. Without an accurate measuring device. Thank you very much. When everything our five senses, which is what we base our science on, can only see 0.0095% of the universe, and not too objective. And that's why we need to look at things with love's co creation. That's unlimited access to what's going on. Love is faster than light. I mean, I keep trying to say, guys, when you keep spouting off these, little things like, you know, nothing's faster than light, that's only, right now in somebody's textbook that was attained by someone's limited 0.0095% of observation of the whole ball of wax. You know, and our history. I mean, humans have been around a billion years now, not in this form, and these empires come and go, and are the Orc belts where the asteroids come from. That used to be another planet, and the closest thing to real historical science of what that is the comic book Superman. Krypton was that planet. And again, do not believe anything I say. I am just your Sensei Albob, here to tweak the little endines in your brain and your heart and your blood cells. More on afterlife. You know, Afterlife. Again, one of those misnomers. So there's, I wish, what's his name was here. Because when I've died 6 times, saw the light, went for the tunnel, the whole thing, and every time I get to the door, I there's my buddies are waiting for me with balloons and party hats, and yay, here he is, pat me on the back, you're doing a good job up to now, go back. So I have to go back because I am destined not to be reincarnated. I am ascending. That's why I have to suffer in this life, is because I have to, again, the two things that I'm really learning over and over and over again is A, you got to keep your eye on the ball. If you're going to hit the nail right, you got to keep focused. We human beings have the attention span less than a goldfish, and that was done by some scientists saying that. So the real key to ascension is to be awake. Buddha's standing by the side of the road, and he's glistening in his total luminance, and Fred Flintstone comes walking by and says, "Whoa, what's that?" And he goes over, "Hey, buddy, are you God?" And Buddha goes, "No." "Whoa, well, what are you?" And Buddha replies, "I am awake." And that's what I'm shooting for. Some days, if I'm lucky, I'm awake 60% of the time, and the other 40%, I am no better than Yogi Bear. Hey. And every scientist, I worked at Los Alamos, San Diaz, Kirkland Air Force Base, and most of those guys were Boo Boo Bear. Uh, let's see. I've seen some amazing UFOs the other night. Yes, thank you, buddy. So why isn't the scientific world even making a peep? Because they don't want to lose their job. Dolan, that's the guy. Yep, Hoagland and Dolan. Yep, yep, yep. Thank you, Mr. Young. Yep. Dolan is my favorite. Richard Dolan, he's the guy who coined the phrase, secret space program, right? And he's a true historian, really sharp. Hoagland is, he's kind of like Steve, Dr. Steve, what's his name, who wants disclosure. And these, I break it down, there are people who want to be the hero, to be remembered as the guy who did that, right? Then there are people who are the scholars who want to ferret out the truth, right? And that's Dolan is that. Hoagland is the guy who wants, to be the hero, right? And he acts like it. I mean, if you've ever seen him lecture or hear him on the radio or anything, he's like, oh, who is the really famous astronomer who died? And he was a NASA boy, and he was on the inside, and probably the young guy of MJ12. I forget his name, but anyway, that's Hoagland. He worked for NASA. And he disses them, but only to a certain level, where Dolan is truly a good historian. Now, the person who is the paint, and this is the other people, who's a saint, is Linda Moulton Howe, and also Catherine Austin Fitts. And both these people didn't want to really do this, but they stumbled into things, and they were so righteous and honest. They could have very easily just went back to what their bosses told them to do, but they said, no, 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 there's something wrong here. I want to figure this out. And the thing about Linda Moulton Howe is that she didn't just go for her little niche of animal mutilation. She is, you know, been the person in the, she's like the, who's that French girl with the sword? She's like her on everything about this. And Catherine Austin Fitts is truly a genius in that she was an economist. She worked in the Ronald Reagan thing, and she was, in the housing authority guys, and she was their bookkeeper, for HUD, and she saw billions of dollars come in and get laundered through HUD and go to like a drain that no one knew where that money was going, and she actually had the guts to go jump down that hole and see where it was, and she found that that was where the black projects were. It was that all that money was again kind of going through the cutouts of the CIA, the NSA, and all the alphabet guys, and she found, she went down, the sleuth of going down that thing, and they just like grabbed her by the back of her head and kind of shook her around and said, "What are you doing, girl?" And she goes, "I'm trying to figure out where all this money and what's it all doing." And they said, "No, you're not," and they kind of threw her back out and said, "Shut the fuck up, don't say anything, go back and do your job or else." And she didn't. She jumped down that hole and went even further, and they grabbed her again, and they tried to kill her, sue her, make her life totally miserable. And like the great, brilliant hero that, great, not a hero, but great person of example, she didn't even flinch. She went toe to toe to these guys, and she was like Tweety Bird. They don't know me too well, do they? And she ate them alive. And then, they kind of left her alone, and they kind of hit a happy medium. But man, you should read her books about what it does. And Joseph P. Farrell is another guy. So talk about science. Forget about it. It's a frigging, you know, I was in the science world, and I was a mystic. I was like Newton and Tesla, meaning I worked for Xerox, and I used to fix the really super duper fancy machines. And I would just, the Xerox guys, they had the black pants, the white shirt, little black tie. I never knew why they had that white shirt, because they'd start taking those machines and they'd get covered in toner, and they would like look like mammy. And I would just lay my hands on the machines and they would work, because I could go into them on an astral plane and see what was wrong. And usually machines like that just need a little nudge. I was just a little pebble in the pond in the Xerox machine. And Xerox, and I was wearing funny hats and, lemon shorts and flip flops walking through the corporate world of Xerox. I went to Xerox Park, which was, now that was a place in the 70s. That was where the laptop and the modern personal computer and and the usage of the internet was, and all of those morons were there, right? And working for Daddy Xerox. And Daddy Xerox had this vision of really bringing everything together and making an egalitarian technological society. And when he brought it back to the board in New York and said, okay, we're going to do this. And they said, no, we're not. We make Xerox machines. We don't do computers. IBM does computers. And so what did frigging Daddy Xerox did was he gave all those kids, like Bill Gates, he gave Gates the operating system that Microsoft works on, right? I mean, Gates, all those guys, Gates, Mr. Google, Mr. Apple, none of those guys were engineers or designed anything. In Apple, Wozniak was the only guy close to being an engineer, but what Mr. Apple was, Steve, he was a showman. He was a used car salesman. That's what he was. He was no visionary. He was no great inventor. None of those guys were. All of Silicon Valley is smoke and mirrors, and that's why it's going bye bye. I have a confession. I've recently been watching Jerry Springer. Well, I hope you were smoking a lot of dope. Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. I mean, it is an anthropologic and sociologic hemorrhoid, and if you're sitting on one of those little hemorrhoid pillows, it's not that bad. Yes, it does exist as a religion, and Buddy, well, not Buddy, because Buddy's somebody else. Your name is so friggin' long, I can't read it. Love. Okay, so the first word is love, love, and light, and disco. Oh, you're the disco. So, um, you're just kind of getting mixed up in semantics. I'm a scientist. I am. I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. If that's not a scientist, I don't know what is. But what is in the academic world and called science is a religion. And if you go do a little history work on Galileo and Newton and see the problems they had with the Catholic Church, you'll see what I'm talking about. Go, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Now there's something interesting. Parallel measurement of sound. So, um, Viv, have you Viva, right? Have you ever taken audio generator, put it into a amplifier, and then plugged a speaker on it and put it on a table so the horn is going out and then filling it with sound. Sand. See, I only have four teeth. Sand, right? And then you click through the audio amplifier, hitting each frequency, right? And you turn the amplifier just loud enough so the speaker will vibrate the sand, but not loud enough to shoot the sand out of the speaker. Um, and as you click through the frequencies, so there's a lot of interesting frequencies like 423, 437, and a whole bunch of others that will make sitchins, patterns, mathematical patterns in the sand. Well, you should go try that out. It'll friggin' blow your mind. Then take pictures of them, right? And do it, with your little digital camera and put it in your computer and find a software package that will take that pattern and see where that takes you. Now that's science there, Mr. Disco. experiment, thesis, and come up with a repeatable outcome. Yep, Krypton was the planet that exploded and is now the asteroid belt. Yep, that's right, Mr. Ray. Or Ray. Sun Ray. It was planet. I love you, buddy. Your proof, love light, entanglement is proved by science, but is still infinite. Emu. Science will prove whatever the man pays them to. And kids, go shoot the etymology of God back to Samaria. See what that word means, because I'll give you a hint. The word Lucifer translates to Baal, and Baal translates to Satan. Satan. Dr. Stephen Fryer? Who's that guy? Greer. That's the guy I'm talking about, Greer. And I knew Steve in Asheville. He used to be an emergency room doctor. And I had a girlfriend who was a shrink, and we lived in he had a big house out in the woods, and he had this little cabin that we would rent. And and I mean, I like him. He's a good guy, but again, he's this guy who wants to be the hero. And all of those guys, people put Greer down, people put, Corey Good down, people put David Wilcox down, and I say no. They all have valid information, and a true scientist takes valid information from all scores, all folks, all everybody, and doesn't judge them on their ideology, right? And that's the problem with modern science today. It's like global warming. You know, Al Gore and the global and the carbonists are a bunch of morons because listen, carbon is good. Trees take carbon and make oxygen. Now the crap that comes out of industrial smokestacks in your car, the things that are lead and mercury and iodine and all that other crap, no, that's not good. But it's not going to affect nature per se. It'd probably kill us, but nature. I used to be part of the Clearwater, and that back in the 70s, the Hudson River was the most toxic. I mean, parts of it used to catch fire. And this guy with a banjo used to go in his sailboat, the Clearwater, up and down the Hudson and stop at little towns and play music and raise money and, paid, helped Ralph Nader. I met this guy. For the life of me, I forget the banjo guy's name. Pete Seeger, that's the guy. And I worked for Ralph Nader, and I was part of NYPIRG, New York Public Interest Research Group, and I worked on the water crew. And, Pete Seeger's notoriety and good nature, Ralph Nader's brilliance as a lawyer, and people's will to clean up their river in about 30 years turned the Hudson River into a really beautiful, clean thing. So it was as polluted as you could get, right? So here we are, humans, polluting everything as bad as we can. But once we die, the earth will go to a very nice back to where it should be. And, the powers that shouldn't be and the hidden hand, they want to foul the nest as much as they can because they're already off planet. You know, you just look at all of the old books, and there were people flying around in spaceships in the Bible before Jesus, and and that's the other thing about science. That's why I was never an academic, because these guys would spout off stuff, scientists the worst, as if it was truth, and they'd have no proof. You know, global warming is a perfect example because it's the planet has not warmed. Now it is fucking freezing, with the solar minimum, and we're going into a 30-year dip in the solar minimum. Like this winter, last winter was ridiculously cold, lots of snow. This one is going to double. I mean, it's going to probably kill thousands of people. Thousands. Right? You live someplace and the electricity goes off and you got 10 feet over your house, this is what you should do. Back in the 1870s, I think, New York City, industrial city, right? It has above ground trains and they were above ground was because they were steam powered, so you couldn't put a locomotive in a tunnel; it would kill everyone. So they had all these, subways like in New York City, Second Avenue subway elevated, Third Avenue. They were all elevated until they put them in the ground with electric trains. So in the 1870s, there was a little volcano that blew up and gave us a mini ice age, right? And so that winter was, up until then, the coldest. And their weathermen weren't that good. Oh, it's winter, it's gonna be cold. Everyone trundled off to work, and then it started snowing, and snowing, and snowing, and people said maybe we should let the workers go home, like around noon. And oh no, they have to work till 6. That's how long they would work, and they worked and worked until 6. Anyway, all of the trains were frozen up there. It got so cold and so snowy that they had like 10 feet. The people couldn't. They walked out in the street, thousands, like 40,000 people froze to death trying to get home from work, and they stayed frozen in that snowdrift for months because it just got colder and colder and colder. Go look that one up. Go look up the Chicago fire. That wasn't Mrs. McGillicuddy's cow kicking over her lamb. At that time of the fire, Chicago was a steel and concrete brick city. What happened was either a asteroid or a comet kind of zipped by us, and little chunks of it came out and basically hit Chicago and basically obliterated it like it was an atomic bomb. When a chunk of stone, the size of your public grammar school, is doing about 72,000 miles an hour and plows into Chicago, you have more than fire. And there was a guy named Fordian, and he was a newspaper reporter, a science newspaper reporter for the Herald Tribune, which was an amazing paper. You should go to whatever library that has some microfiche of the Herald Tribune and go read that stuff. And his science, there was a science, and he left because he wanted to know, and he wanted data, and he didn't want dogma. He, basically, he would say, "What do you think of this, Doctor So and So?" Some scientist in some university. It's well, it's swamp gas and a reflection of Venus. And he said, "Well, what about this data?" And that guy would go, "Well, I'm a doctor and I know. You're just a reporter. You know nothing." That's not science. And I sad to say that most of science is still that. And most of NASA. I dropped my phone. You guys still there? Can you hear me now? Did you guys know that most of NASA is owned by the Catholic Church? The Hubble telescope was paid for by the Catholic Church. Yes, cancer cures. I knew this, I was at Sloan Kettering, right? And I knew this woman who was a guy, and she came up with the cure for cancer. Basically, it was very simple. No chemo, no radiation, no cutting and slicing. Basically, a body can not be an environment for cancer if it's an alkaline state. And the other thing that she um, figured out was the little thing that allows the cell genetically to pick up the cancer gene and then replicate it out of control is a little enzyme. And it can be stopped very easily by just changing the charge of the balance of that hormone, which is a very simple thing to do, and very benign to the human body. And she came up with this idea, published it, did a experiment, a bench experiment that proved it, and no one would give her any support at Sloan Kettering because they were scared to lose their job. They didn't want cancer to end. And then instead of saying her science was bad, they said that he was a she, and how can we trust someone like that? So when you talk about science, I'm sorry, Mr. Disco. And I love disco. And I used to be the disco king in New York. I built discos, many of them. I thought you may have really got a mix of Mae West and Groucho Marx. I think you got it. I am the mix of Mae West and Groucho Marx. I've been looking for a friend of mine said I needed to be the who's the cowboy guy who used to talk about politicians who died in airplane crash with Wiley Post. He said I should be that guy. That's when I was trying to be the cowboy guy, a couple of weeks ago. It just, but I think you got it. Groucho Marx and Mae West. I'm working on that one. I might even shave this off and just put black shoe polish up here. Or just maybe keep this and put electric tape up there and wear the hat. And talk with a good old voice and Groucho Marx voice. That's it. You got it. Mae West and Groucho Marx. Buddy, you are a genius. A genius. Come up and see me sometime, big boy. Yep. Your mom owns most of NASA. Oh, buddy, I love you, buddy. Let's see. And everyone invents everything over and over again. There's no real, except for Nikola Tesla, but he went into state and kind of got all his ideas from, ascended masters. Let's see. Jamie. However, doing this daily, okay? Yes. WC Fields, him too. Maybe I'll have to make some old, but Groucho and Mae West, I think, this is, the Endor, the he, she. And then I could, you know what, I'm trying to, any of you guys know Soupy Sales? And Soupy Sales had all these characters which were sock puppets. And a guy who, was his cohort that you never saw him. You just saw the socks and he would knock on the door and he'd be the neighbor on the other side of the fence. And he was the straight man and Soupy gave the punchline. Anyway, so I'm trying to think of the, the Soupy Sales of the 21st century and having Mae West, Groucho Marx, and W.C. Fields. Yep. And have them as sock puppets. Yes. Yes, we're getting somewhere here. I'm getting some socks and yep, you got it. Okay. Magical Child Bookstore really like Bob. Well, that was Weiser's, and I mean, in New York anyway. The magical child bookstore was Weiser's, and that was an antediluvian bookstore, and it was on, below 20th, over on the east side, and then it moved a couple of times. But it was like something out of Harry Potter. And then the other thing I think you're thinking about is the little alley off the main drag in Limerick, Ireland, where it was like that was straight out of Harry Potter too. That's where the little tea shop was, where the woman read my tea leaves. I am, well, my lady is. What? Boo, boo, boo. Yes, eccentric. You can get the urge, but not prepared. And that's, see, everything, again, you have to keep your eye on the bowl and you have to do everything fresh. That's why the herbs, I mean, a lot of the herbs that are prepared that you get at your whole, whole earth or whatever, they're okay, right? But they are 1/10 of what they could be if you made them yourself. And when you make things for other people, you have to muscle test them, and you have to muscle test yourself. I mean, you know, that little term of that doctors are the worst patients is very true. So, again, you got to, intent is everything. So, if science could only have true intent of love's co creation and keep their eye on the ball, science would be what it should be. I'm not against science. I'm not against thesis, experiment, postulus. Was a scientist before he was an engineer. He was a mystic before he's a scientist, and he was a scientist mystic, because he would go into state. Yes, and he would do the drawings, and he would give them to his technicians, like the Russian guy, to make the machines, and it would work, right? And the Russian guy would do the math to show, the other engineers how it worked. Yeah. But like I said, if you want it to be 90% better than anything else makes for you, you gotta make it yourself. Do 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 do. What should I name my child? Okay. First off, what gender is it? Second off, what are the cultural fibers of you and the mother? And give me that info. And you might want to contact me. No, buddy. Okay, here's a good story about naming children. so so I think I've told you guys that when I was a youngster, I was a photojournalist because a friend of mine was a great photographer, and at 14, at 9 I started to be an apprentice electrician. At 14, I was a real electrician. My buddy, he was working as a photojournalist at 14, and we were the only two guys at this really really rich people's prep school. There were three people there who weren't billionaire children of billionaires. Me, my photo friend, and the one black kid, Maddie. And and so anyway, so we graduated high school and we went on to college on the that was so groovy. I mean, when I took my college boards, I was tripping, and I just got the 20 points you get for writing your name. I mean, I just kind of made a drawing of a Christmas tree out of the little squares that you're supposed to, you know, color in, and you'd think I'd get a few right. I didn't get one right, Melvin. Anyway, so my buddy, he, became the photo editor of High Point Enterprise, and I was living in North Carolina at the time. I was over at Duke, and I'd see him pretty regularly. We'd right to get away from town and work and this and that, and generally have a good old time at Duke because it was, even though it was a grind school, it was a party school too. Anyway, long story short, he got the job as editor. He called me up. Hey, you want to be a photo? You want to be a photojournalist? And I said sure. And so I went and did it. And it was he was like Batman and I was like Robin. And I could tell you a zillion stories. I won't. I will only tell this one story at this time anyway. This week.